What's good, fam? I don't know what the hell that was. It's Teacher Eddie back with another reaction. So today we're doing the Battle of Castle Itter. So continuing on my theme of history that doesn't get talked about much, a little obscure and such. I know Sabaton also did a song about this. I'll react to that a little later on. But this is one of the most fascinating stories of World War II. So the Battle of Castle Itter, just to, set the stage, so to speak, takes place after Hitler has already committed suicide, okay? And it takes place about 3 days before the official surrender of Germany. So this is considered the last battle, so to speak. So the Battle of Castle Itter takes place on May 5th, as you see on the screen, and it marks the only time that German and American forces fight side by side against the Nazis. So Castle Itter was a place where VIP French prisoners were held. So there were former prime ministers there. They had Charles de Gaulle's sister. They had Prime Minister Clemenceau's son there, and a whole list of different dignitaries, athletes, things of that nature. So they were basically keeping these people there as POWs as a kind of insurance, right, for a rainy day, so to speak, if they needed to trade somebody or whatever it may be. And also, when the Germans started losing foot in the war, these prisoners became more and more important. And there were various castles like this throughout Austria, which held different types of prisoners of war that were VIPs. And they were kept in a castle. So, I mean, yes, they were prisoners. They weren't allowed to leave, but they were kind of kept in the lap of luxury, so to speak. They had chefs there. They had all the amenities. It wasn't Dachau or a concentration camp. So once Hitler commits suicide, news starts to spread, and the castle's abandoned, right? So then begins the battle to save them from the surrounding German forces, which are still keeping a stronghold around the castle. So this is a crazy story. If you think Endgame was the greatest crossover ever, wait until you see this. So, simple history, let's get into it.
The Battle for Castle Itter, May 5th, 1945. The U.S. Army and German Wehrmacht versus the German SS, Austrian Alps. On May 5th, 1945, a few days after Hitler's suicide, American soldiers under command of U.S. Army Captain John.
I love the little X's on the eyes. So at this point, Hitler's body's been burned already, right? And of course, laying next to him with her tongue out is his good old Eva Braun. Hitler and Eva get married in the bunker. Hitler's bunker, where him and various other, his prime minister of propaganda, of course, Joseph Goebbels is there. Him and his family commit suicide. His wife actually also poisons their children with cyanide. So everybody's like, yo, we're out. Because Hitler's big fear was to not end up like Benito Mussolini. So when Mussolini is captured, him and his wife are strung up like in the middle of town, beaten to death, tortured, and displayed. So Hitler did not want that to happen. That was a huge fear of his. So that's why they get married, and then they're like, hey, where do you want to go to for our honeymoon? Hell sounds pretty good. Let's go to hell. So they take cyanide pills, and then they shoot each other as well.
After Hitler's suicide, American soldiers under command of U.S. Army Captain John C. Jack Lee Jr. teamed up with a number of Wehrmacht soldiers under German Major Josef Sepp Gangl, who.
Now, Gangl is a very, very important character in this story. So at this point, Joseph Gangl had switched sides, right? And Gangl is going to be a major player and a hero in this battle. He becomes, unfortunately, the only casualty on both sides during this battle. But He becomes a national hero in Austria, which is also the birthplace of, some of the greats, such as Hitler. And of course, Mozart was Austrian as well. The castle, Castle Itter, actually belonged to the Bishop of Salzburg, whom basically kept Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart under his thumb. If you've ever seen the movie Amadeus, you'll know who I'm talking about. Not a nice guy.
He was opposed to the Nazis and had been collaborating with the Austrian resistance. Joining them were French prisoners of war and a Waffen-SS officer who had defected. Gangl had surrendered with a white flag from his vehicle to Captain John C. Jack Lee, who was close by, presenting the mission to rescue prisoners from Itter Castle. An attempt for assistance in a rescue by the castle's Czech cook had reached Austrian resistance in a nearby town, and as a result, reached Major Josef Gangl, who was now their leader. The first attempt to find help was by Yugoslav political prisoner Zvonimir Kukovic, but it had failed. While he had reached
I believe he was the electrician. So the electrician tries to go out first to get news out after the German officers have abandoned the castle. The main officer in charge had actually committed suicide as well. He was also in charge of the Dachau prison camp, and one of his final orders were to execute all of the prisoners left over in Dachau, but thankfully the Allied forces had made it, and they actually liberated Dachau like right before this battle. But unfortunately, some were killed. Like at the last, like that is so heartbreaking. I mean, the whole thing is heartbreaking, of course, but imagine like making it, you're right there. Liberation is on the way, and at the last second, you're one of those people who gets executed by these, I don't even know what to call them, demons.
Major John Kramer's and the American 103rd Infantry Division, their heavily armored rescue attempt, which would use M10 tank destroyers, was recalled by heavy shelling and by superiors for encroaching into the territory of the US 36th Division.
Red tape.
The objective was to rescue VIPs from an Austrian castle called Schloss Itter in the Tyrol, now converted to a high-profile prison that held French VIPs, including the ex-prime ministers Paul Renaud and Edouard Daladier, a tennis star and former military figure.
Yeah, so Joseph Gangl, again, is the only casualty. He's hit by a sniper's bullet in the head while actually protecting the prime minister. But remember the tennis star. Now, number one, the tennis star looked much better than that because he was a prime athlete. But remember the tennis star. This guy is going to turn like into Batman in this fucking story later on.
The German guards at the castle had fled, and the prisoners had broken into the weapons room and armed themselves with pistols, rifles, and submachine guns. However, a German Waffen-SS division was roaming around the nearby forest and had arrived to recapture the castle and execute the prisoners.
Yeah, so, because a lot of people, when I tell this story in class, students ask, well, hey, if everybody abandoned, if, the Germans abandoned the castle, the prisoners have all these weapons, why don't they just leave? Well, that was the reason why, because again, this takes place after Hitler's suicide, but it takes place 3 days before the official surrender. It's kind of like the video I did about, history misconceptions that, the Civil War didn't really end with Lee's surrender. Well, as I mentioned in that video, this happens all the time in wars of this nature, right? It takes time, so the German officers who were guarding the castle got the news, obviously. But the division that was surrounding the castle, these are just soldiers, right? They're not privy to all this news. So as far as they're concerned, the battle is still ongoing. So they weren't trying to recapture the castle. They really just had no clue that the castle had been, abandoned. They were just patrolling around, right? Protecting the castle from any other, invaders or anything else. It was a patrol. So obviously, you have Charles de Gaulle's sister there. You have Clemenceau's son, dignitaries, prime ministers. These are not trained soldiers, right? Even if they are armed, they're not going to be able to, stand a chance, against a trained, military personnel.
The American and German group closed in on the castle, and Lee and Gangl greeted the unimpressed French prisoners who were expecting a bigger rescue.
Yes, this is the best part. So something they failed to mention is that the Lee's troop had 8 people in it. And they were joined by 6 additional soldiers from the black unit. So, I mean, again, you think Endgame is the greatest crossover? Picture this. You're these French VIPs, and you're picturing this, like, majestic rescue. And you get this ragtag group of Wehrmacht officers, U.S. troops, some black guys, because the French weren't very open to African Americans at the time. And you're standing there waiting for this glorious rescue because you feel you're so important. And they were so pissed about this rescue. Like, these people are here to rescue them, but they're like, really? Is that all? That is all you bring for us? Where's like the champagne and caviar toasts? Where's the wine? They're like, what the hell, man? You got a bunch of German dudes, some Americans, and some black dudes. Like, what the fuck is this, man? Was this the A-team coming to get us? They were so pissed off about this.
Force. Lee ordered the Sherman tank to park at the front gate so it could cover the road.
That was actually the name of the tank. They're not making that up. Yeah, they did use one of the German Sherman tanks.
Once the men had been fed, Lee, Gangl, and the young SS officer set up defensive positions and talked over strategies to defend the castle from the impending SS force. In the evening, a reconnaissance force of Waffen-SS opened fire on the castle to test the enemy's strength. The US and Wehrmacht troops moved to their defensive positions and returned fire. At dawn, the SS used an 88 anti-tank gun, which was well concealed, to destroy part of the castle, and then blew up the Sherman tank, which had been providing machine gun fire. However, the radio man inside was able to escape in time. The Waffen-SS, numbering around 150 men, had began their main attack from the tree line towards the castle gate, and from the west, reaching the castle's lower walls. The American and German defenders, as well as the French prisoners, fired at the attackers from their high-up positions in the castle and loopholes. The SS managed to kill and wound several of the defenders, including Josef Gangl, who was killed by a sniper while trying to move French Prime Minister Renaud from home.
Yeah. So several people were injured and some were shot during the battle. But again, Gangl is the only casualty, right? So I just want to correct simple history here. The only casualty on the Ally side is Gangl. The others were wounded, as I mentioned. So they're all considered casualties, but the only death was Gangl, while he was trying to protect Prime Minister Renaud.
By the afternoon, Lee and the American and German defenders were running low on ammunition and were seeking reinforcements from Major John Kramers, who had telephoned him with the assistance of Austrian partisans. A relief force was now on its way. As the situation was getting desperate, Lee accepted tennis star Jean Barotra's courageous offer to vault the castle wall and run past the SS strongpoints and ambushes to find and guide the reinforcements.
Bro, I was saying Barotra. So, like, this dude, like, they make him look like this old guy, but Barotra, like I said, turns into fucking Batman. I mean, if you're gonna have an Endgame type crossover, you need, all the superheroes you can get, and all these guys were heroes and brave as fuck. But Barotra, like, again, like, scales this wall like he's Batman but he doesn't even need a grappling hook. He runs through enemy fire. Like, this dude is, like, so badass.
To the castle, Lee prepared for an SS breach of the walls and a close quarters fight until finally, at 4 p.m., the American reinforcements arrived with tanks, quickly defeating the Waffen-SS force and taking many prisoners.
Yeah.
It is believed that this was the only battle where Americans and Germans fought together as allies.
So there was another battle where the Germans and Americans did fight side by side, but that was more a mechanical battle. It wasn't actually soldiers fighting on the ground. It was more a teaming up of, I think it was an air mission, something like that. I don't remember the exact details. So on a technicality, it's not the only time, but it is the only time that boots on the ground soldiers team up together to fight against the Nazis, right? And again, simple history. Again, there were black soldiers there, so kind of disappointed that number one, they didn't point that out, and number two, are not represented in this image here. So again, this is why history teachers like me are on YouTube to help out and supplement. So the other big reason that American forces were in Austria at this point, and this is something that, if you're interested in, is covered extremely well in the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. I haven't seen Band of Brothers since it came out, but it's just absolutely amazing. I mean, Spielberg, at the end of the day, should make a movie about Castle Itter. I think it would make an amazing movie. But at this point, again, Hitler's committed suicide already. VE Day is just 3 days away. The war is over, except for some technicalities. And a lot of troops are going into the Swiss Alps because that's where a lot of the private residences of top Nazi officials are located, including Hitler's own private residence. When they get there, they're very disappointed because they were expecting to find treasures and God knows what. But it was kind of like when Geraldo Rivera opened up Al Capone's safe. For those who don't know the story, back in the day, Geraldo Rivera, it was like a national phenomenon. Geraldo, they found Al Capone's safe and they're going to open it up live on national television. And I remember as a kid, watching this and they were stretching it out. I haven't seen that shit stretched out, since, I have no idea, man. That shit was more stretched out than the Pillsbury Doughboy masturbating, man. It took forever, and then when they finally open up the vault and get inside, guess what's in there? Absolutely nothing, right? So that's kind of how the troops felt when they I mean, there was, valuable stuff there, but nothing that, of earth-shattering importance. So that's another reason why they were in the region in the first place. So yeah, Battle of Castle Itter, absolutely fascinating. I wish these videos would actually get more views. I know you guys love the rap battles and everything else, but I am also here to spread this, knowledge as a historian, as a history teacher, and especially talk about more obscure things rather than just covering stuff that everybody already knows. So I hope you enjoy these videos. If you do, I really appreciate the support. Make sure you leave a like so the algorithm picks these up. And I really do hope these take off because I really do enjoy doing them. And when people do watch them, they always say, man, that was good. I didn't even know about that. But in either case, please check out the links in the description. I've been Teacher Ready, and I'll catch you in the next video. Fam! And as always, shining out the Patreons who keep things running here, starting with the Chancellors, Elena G, Nazvanyu, Douglas C, KP, the Hollow King, the Principals, Aaron Shepard, Addison, Clement, Vijandra, Rachel, Alex, King Panda, Freeman, Moody Kakati, Nathan, Chad, Chris Dabagol, Sophia, Robin, Lord Gandalf, Luna, Harry, Robin, and Blue Tech, and of course, Rasmus. I've been Teacher Ready, and I'll catch you next time.